Our pre-existing bias towards what we deem the ideal victim and ideal crime ultimately decides how sexual assault cases are handled, um, even on an individual level, and the acknowledgement of this trend is what will lead to reform over time. So the textbook describes how the facts of a rape are very interesting to anyone involved in the sentencing because it so varies, even though it could look like the same crime on paper, um, which is, someone using someone else for sexual gratification without their consent. Because the textbook describes how if someone knew the person that raped them or assaulted them, if that person that was assaulted had ingested any drugs, if they were a prostitute, there are so many other factors that once now added on can skew how people perceive the event that happened to the victim. Like all the other subjects in this textbook, there are very similar trends into who tends to be victimized the most. And again, with this type of interpersonal crime, it's women in younger women, minority women, women in urban areas, and in low socioeconomic statuses. They just tend to be the most vulnerable people in society. And then on the other end, it's men that don't typically experience this crime. It's quoted in the textbook that about like 1 in 10 men, 1 in 10 callers who rape crisis centers are men. This discrepancy in terms of victimization is kind of why the women's movement was the one to start bringing all the not like awareness to the actual rates and effects of sexual assault. They had women come forward and talk about their distrust in enforcement, and rightfully so, actually, because the textbook would go on to describe how in Baltimore, for example, the report rates of these types of crimes dropped so dramatically that they actually had to look into why this was the case, and it was seen that for 10 years officers refused to accept complaints at crime scenes, and detectives asked such hostile and confrontational questions that the complainants stopped cooperating. So it's showing that, not only do we have this idea of what the perfect victim is, and we act accordingly from that, but then even when people do come forward, they don't feel like they have anybody on their side necessarily. The issue of prostitutes was really interesting to me because it shows that, they don't necessarily just care about the crime committed against you, but who you are as a person before and after the crime. It even talks about like women that get pregnant from like an incest related crime or a rape crime. They might still be forced to carry out that pregnancy, and in some cases men may even be given visitation rights to the child that is conceived from that rape, which is again endangering that woman. But even men, those 1 in 10 victims, they apparently do not come forward even for years after the assault because they just, again, even they suffer from that stigma. So ultimately, what will lead to a lack of underreporting and then better reforms and services to be provided is for a safer space for victims. It even describes how like sometimes victims are their personal information is given out because the public has a right to know. There are just so many pitfalls right now with how the criminal justice system is handling rape and sexual assault victims that they're almost doubly victimizing.